Breaking tonight, new fallout from the latest Clinton controversy, this time involving one of the best-known journalists in the country, and how he was defending the Clinton Foundation on TV without disclosing the donations he made in private. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. George Stephanopoulos is a former Clinton White House insider turned journalist who has reached the top of his profession. He is co-host of ABC News' morning show, host of their flagship Sunday political talk show, and today he took a big hit. Last month, Stephanopoulos got national attention for his tough interview of Peter Schweizer, the author of the book Clinton Cash. That is the blockbuster new book detailing an allegedly suspicious pattern of behavior by the Clintons, where they took hundreds of millions of dollars for themselves and their family foundation from people that had business before Hillary Clinton's State Department. Stephanopoulos landed the first interview with Schweizer, and he gave him a grilling.
Do you have any evidence that a crime may have been committed? We've done investigative work here at ABC News, found no proof of any kind of direct action. There's no evidence at all that Hillary Clinton got directly involved in this decision. Do you have any evidence that she actually intervened in this issue? The Democrats have said this is indication of your partisan interest. They say you used to work for President Bush as a speechwriter. You're funded by the Koch brothers.
What you did not hear in that interview is that as Stephanopoulos was grilling the author of Clinton Cash, Stephanopoulos failed to disclose that he himself had donated $75,000 in Clinton Cash of his own, something that he now says he should have taken care of. Joining us now, Howard Kurtz, host of Fox News Media Buzz, and Mark Theissen, who's a former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. Welcome to you both. And so let me just start with you on this, Mark. The irony of Stephanopoulos pressing Schweizer on the fact that he worked for a time in the Bush White House and therefore may be too partisan to opine on the Clintons, given his own position and what we know now.
No, that's amazing. And I'm going to do, by the way, Megyn, what Stephanopoulos didn't do, disclose the fact that Peter Schweizer is a friend of mine. We worked together in the Bush White House. We have a speechwriting firm together, and I'm a friend and admirer of Peter Schweizer. George Stephanopoulos actually questioned whether Peter Schweizer had a partisan interest in his book because he had worked for 4 months in the Bush administration when he was the communications director for the Clinton White House and the communications director for the 1992 Clinton campaign. Is it fair to say that maybe he has a partisan interest in defending Hillary Clinton? If you look at that interview and all the quotes you had there, it certainly seems like he did.
So that was a question some were raising even at the time. I mean, just sort of the irony of, Stephanopoulos of all people raising that question with Schweizer. And now, Howie, tonight, it's a bombshell that he was donating to the very foundation that he was cross-examining this author on without disclosing it. I mean, it's obviously big. Eric Wemple of the Washington Post out tonight with a piece that calls this a very serious transgression. What is your take? How bad is it?
Such a bombshell that George Stephanopoulos has now had to withdraw as ABC's moderator in the Republican presidential debate next year. Look, this blunder by Stephanopoulos is so severe that it really threatens to undo what he's accomplished in his 18 years at ABC News. Now, I used to interview him. Yes, it's that serious because the Clintons is his Achilles heel because of his background. I used to interview him and get spun by him in the days when he was a campaign operative and a Clinton White House aide. But for him as a top ABC anchor to give this money to the Clinton Foundation while covering the story is in itself a grave error in judgment. But then to not tell his bosses at ABC News, to not disclose it to the viewers, it's unthinkable.
What now? The ABC comes out and says we stand behind him, but as you point out, how he's removed himself from hosting ABC's presidential debate. So my question to you is, if you do that as a journalist and you acknowledge that you are too conflicted to host the presidential debate, aren't you too conflicted to cover the presidential race? How are the viewers supposed to trust him in the lead up to the debate and the postmortem after the debate, but not in the debate itself?
the point is, he's going to be covering, if ABC doesn't change its mind on this, it wouldn't even give him a rhetorical slap on the wrist, covering the campaign of a woman he worked with as First Lady. Now, look, the Clinton Foundation does some good work around the world. News Corp, which is the sister corporation of Fox News, has made a major donation. But it's different for Stephanopoulos as a news anchor. And I just watched an interview he did just over 2 weeks ago on The Daily Show, where Stephanopoulos said, talking about the Clinton Foundation, everybody knows that when donors give that money, what you get is access and the influence that comes with access, and yet he didn't disclose it.
You know, when you listen to that interview, Mark, that he did of Peter Schweizer, he was tough on him, and that's fine. And I want to point out for the record that that interview followed a package, a taped piece that basically outlined the allegations of the book and offered almost no defense of the Clintons. So the interview has to be remembered in that context. But the questions he asked of Schweizer in the interview sounded very much like what we heard from Team Clinton in defending the book, and indeed his interview wound up getting put in an ad that Hillary Clinton put together after the interview.
No, it's amazing. And look, I mean, if you remember when this book came out, the Clinton campaign talking points were Peter Schweizer has no evidence, that phrase, no evidence. And I remember when we were on talking about it when it first came on, you said that's pretty weak defense. But if you look at his interview, he repeated almost every time he spoke, he used some version of the phrase, no evidence. There's no evidence that Hillary Clinton went directly into this decision. The Clintons say you've produced no evidence, and I still haven't heard any direct evidence. We have no evidence of government action. No evidence, no evidence, no evidence. He was echoing the Clinton campaign's talking points for debunking Peter Schweizer's book. So I think, quite frankly, with his history as having been a paid operative for Bill and Hillary Clinton, he should not have been doing that interview in the first place. And it's really, as Howie says, I think it's questionable whether he should be covering the Clinton campaign.
But Howie, the ABC News has come out and said, look, and George Stephanopoulos says, I was trying to help AIDS, I was trying to fight AIDS and deforestation, and they, my heart was in the right place. And it was just a mistake of not disclosing it. And it was an honest mistake. In your view, is the problem the donations, the failure to disclose, both? What is it?
All of it, and in the damage control here has been awful, because in the initial apology, Megyn, Stephanopoulos just talked about the failure to disclose. Now he's had to expand that and says, I shouldn't have given the money in the first place. I mean, great that he's giving to charity, but find any other charity on earth to give to. If you are a guy who's become one of the most famous television journalists on the planet, and you started life as a partisan Democrat with a very big platform, the White House podium, you have a special burden to demonstrate your independence. And I'm sorry to say it, I think that George has tried to be fair at ABC, and hasn't always succeeded, but has tried to be fair. But I think that given his history and given the fact that he hid this, and it had to be disclosed by another news organization, I think he's failed that test.
The other problem, Mark, is that the donations were made over the past 3 years, which is, it's not like it's been a big mystery that Hillary Clinton was gearing up for a presidential race. And it's not like the Clinton Foundation is the only one you can go to if you want to help fight AIDS or these causes. So it does raise the question of why that organization at that time.
Yeah, it definitely does raise that question. And look, I mean, I think that if he wanted to show his objectivity as a journalist and prove his effectiveness, rather than bringing Peter Schweizer on his show to grill him about the book, maybe he could have been the one who landed the interview with Hillary Clinton and grilled her about Peter's book.
He said they reached out to her and they declined.
Well,
she's not giving any interviews.
She's not doing any, right? He's in the same boat as the rest of us. She won't talk. Well, we'll see what happens with ABC News. This is a difficult position for them and for him. And we'll continue to follow it. Guys, thank you both.
Thanks, Megyn.
We've also